God blessed Dad, as is well known, with a love for his country. Dad understood that the deeper he went in his Catholic faith, the better a citizen and public servant he became. God blessed him with the desire to be the country's good servant because he was God's first.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. Last week, the country mourned the loss of Justice Antonin Scalia. On Saturday, Justice Scalia's funeral mass was held at the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception here in D.C., and it was presided over not by the Archbishop of Washington, but as you heard, by his son, Father Paul Scalia. And I can't imagine a tougher assignment for any priest. Father Paul joins us to reflect on his loss, on his beloved dad, and to discuss Justice Scalia's legacy beyond his term on the court. Great to see you, Father. Thank you for being here, and our condolences. So many of our audience, I know, were praying with you, and
we certainly felt that.
Yeah, no, it was an amazing, beautiful event to be a part of. But the prayer of that Mass, the way it was conducted, from the music to your homily to the liturgy, just. I know your father was smiling, and I shared a pew many times with him, and he was not one that liked the kind of loosey-goosey liturgy, so he would have loved this.
No.
Yeah.
Well, it's really, in many ways, a tribute to the mystical body of Christ, because it is the prayers of the people of God that I certainly felt helped me get through it, but then also just the liturgy of the church and the instructions that the church gives us what a funeral should be. I mean, that's follow the directions, right?
Yeah, right. You certainly did. I want to play. There was a little moment here where you talked about your father's faith and his love of the liturgy. I want to play that and get your reflections. He said this:
He loved the clarity and coherence of the church's teachings. He treasured the church's ceremonies, especially the beauty of her ancient worship. He trusted the power of her sacraments as the means of salvation, as Christ working within him for his salvation.
Tell me about your father's faith. I mean, you mentioned in there the ancient worship of the church. Unpack that bit of it.
Yeah, he was very devoted to the extraordinary form, as we call it now, and loved the Latin in the liturgy and just the ancient rites, and he loved as I said in the homily, just the clarity of her teachings and the coherence, the tightness of the church's doctrine, and something you could really sink your teeth into and never exhaust it all.
Now, he was always very careful, despite the fact that he was very clear about what he believed, spoke about it many times in various settings. You'll remember, so many times I approached your father and said, can we do an interview? Would you do the sit-down? And he always begged me off because he didn't want people confusing his personal faith with his approach to the law.
He didn't like to be called a Catholic judge or jurist, because that flies in the face of everything that he believed about his jurisprudence, which was that he was to set aside his own beliefs and opinions and simply apply what had been entrusted to him.
But yet he was profoundly Catholic, and I think the greatest exemplar of his Catholicity was his devotion to the Constitution and the way he interpreted it, often going in ways and surprising people with his opinions because they took him down paths that were unpredictable.
Well, I think it's a matter of integrity, and just having the integrity to say, well, this might get me to a place that I don't want to be.
Necessarily want to go,
but I've been asked to interpret this document, not another one.
I have to ask you something. As I watched from the pew during the funeral mass, I kept thinking, because I had tears running down my face. So many people around me. I mean, these are politicians. You got lawyers in the room. People not exactly who wear their feelings on their sleeves. There was not a dry eye during most of that funeral. How did you maintain your composure through?
Well, again, that's a tribute to the many prayers that I know were offered for my dad, for my family, for me. And also just, I really a great grace to be able to offer my father's funeral mass and to preach it. I don't think there's any greater gift that a son could give his father. My father, gave me life, and this is a way that I can lay down my life in order for him to have eternal life. So it's that exchange of gifts, right? And so I just, at one point, just realized this is a tremendous gift that I get to do this.
Yeah, no, it was, for those of us watching, for those of us who knew the family, who knew your dad, it was, and to see all your nieces and nephews, so many beautiful family, and their reaction to, the entirety of the Mass. But then when you and the casket left the church, I mean, it was just one of those moments. There are rare occasions in this capital city where I can say, you see a faith lived out and in bold colors.
Well, thanks be to God that was conveyed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, that things aren't perfect, right? But we are people trying to live by the faith.
Well, you said something in your homily that illuminates this, and I want you to reflect on this a little more. But roll this moment in the homily.
We are here then, as he would want, to pray for God's inexplicable mercy to a sinner, to this sinner, Antonin Scalia. Let us not show him a false love and allow our admiration to deprive him of our prayers.
You really you underscored that point, that this is not just this is not a commemoration dinner or a feel-good affair. This is a funeral mass for somebody's
Which
soul.
is just the Catholic understanding of the funeral mass. And more directly for me, I mean, my father would be livid. he would be livid if I had done otherwise, and I wouldn't want to do any otherwise. Not only because he would be angry about it, but because this is our understanding of death and of praying for the dead and what the funeral mass is all about. I mean, and I think something that I know I experienced was praying for him and giving him the proper funeral rites brought great peace. And I think a lot of times in funerals, people want to jump to the peace,
right?
And not realize, no, that is a result of the proper mourning and the proper praying for the person's soul and acknowledging the gifts that the person had received, but also the limitations that the person had and the failures,
Well, I love that you were willing to point out some of those. He forgot your names,
Well, that's not a moral failing.
No, that's not. That's not. But your brother has wrote a piece just after your father's passing, and it's something, boy, did it convict me, and it's something I kept thinking about. When you are in the public eye, when you are someone who makes their living in your head, you do have to cloister yourself away. What was that like growing up? Your brother said, I can remember him behind the doors in the office, with his headphones on, doing his thing.
So that brother is, what is he, 7 years younger than I am, or 8? So he remembers one house that we lived in, and I remember those same things. I remember Dad going into his study and just, sort of hunkering down. But I remember when we lived in Chicago and he was teaching at the University of Chicago Law School, that his study was really sort of a reverential place, It was that's Dad's in there working, and there was a sense there that's tough stuff that he's engaged in. He's not just pushing papers. He's really applying his mind to something.
But it's hard on the family because you're deprived of their presence a little bit.
Yeah, for a time, but I think that's probably true in any family to some degree or another. And then there are times, I think, with any family we were happy for his presence, and of course other times we wanted to be deprived of his presence, right?
No, don't tell my kids that, but that's true, of course.
Right, you're family accepted, I'm sure.
No. When I come to the door, they go, "Oh, you're here." Oh, it's
right. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like any other family. Like you have all of those things going on.
No, you all handled it with such grace, and I think it was such an example, not only to Catholics, but to all people, of a family mourning in public for a great public witness, which your father was. So many people have talked about his legacy, and I want to talk about that in a moment, but I have to ask you this. We've been getting emails since his passing. Why didn't the family demand a toxicology report?
Right.
Why didn't you demand an autopsy? You could have done that. You didn't. There are all these wild conspiracy theories out there.
Yeah, and those are such a distraction, and they're just not helpful at all. They're a distraction at best.
He was in poor health.
Well, he had a lot of he had health problems, right? And he was also the kind of guy that, you know, like a lot of men, probably wasn't addressing them and being as, you know, attentive to them as he should have been.
Like a lot of Italian men.
Well, that's probably right. Yeah, so all these conspiracy theories, it just, I don't really think that there's anything to them at all. And the family, we never gave it a second thought, because it was just so clear to us that.
Well, some have said the public, because he served on the court, the public should have been furnished with a definitive answer of the cause of death. Do you think that's not the case?
Well, I think when the man is 79 years old, and there was a press conference yesterday in which they sort of divulged some of his health concerns.
Yes.
When that's the case, I don't think you need to keep digging. And I think there's also a certain courtesy that is owed to the family, that you just kind of back off and let the family have its grief. And yes, he was a public servant, but he was a husband and father first.
I like that. Let's finally wrap up with his legacy. So many people have talked about his role on the court, the vanguard of originalism.
Right.
Your thoughts on his legacy as his son and as a priest?
Well, I mean, for me as his son, his legacy is gonna be much more personal, much more intimate, and just.
And what would that be?
Granting to me, I mean, and each child is different, obviously, but I think what I really received from him that I treasure is that same love for the church's teachings, their clarity, their coherence, their power to save. And we call it saving doctrine for a reason. And the love for the liturgy. I mean, I, you know, often would see him just moved by the liturgy. When it was good, moved in a good way. When it was bad, moved in a bad way.
I saw that too.
But so for me, that's great legacy. Personally, I think for the nation, there's the legacy in the jurisprudence, and I'll let the lawyers speak to that. But I think also just that he was not afraid to be known as a man of faith. I know made a great difference in the lives of a lot of Catholics and non-Catholics, and they respected that. And I think that set a good tone, and I think that's a great legacy as well.
Father Paul Scalia, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ray.
Our condolences
Thank
to
you
you,
so
to
much.
the family,
And
to your mother,
thank
Maureen.
you to all your viewers for their prayers.
They were deeply touched. It was a beautiful mass, and our thoughts and prayers are with you all.
Thank you
in
so
your
much.
loss.